Well, hello everyone. Welcome. We're going to talk about Doom. No, anybody that knows anything about Invader Zim, you'll appreciate that reference. Anyway, so I kind of wanted to talk about some of the existential threats and maybe some of the things that stem the doomers like to talk about and worry about, and maybe kind of give them a likelihood of happening, sort of a gut check feeling. My wife said that the way that I'm going about some of this conversationally, it feels a lot like a lecture. So I figured I might as well lean right into that and get out the whiteboard and start writing things down and making it feel a little bit more like a lecture. Wasn't my intention, but for now that's what we'll lean into. Let's see. So some of the things that we should talk about are called existential threats, right? Now, what I get to do is show everyone how awful my handwriting is. And this is why I'm not a teacher. Existential threats are something that threaten the existence of humanity in some way or another. It's probably not the official definition, but that's my best guess as to how that translates. I'd like to talk about the likelihood of some of these existential threats, and if there's warrant for there to be concern about doom, and possibly some ways for us to be prepared individually, and possibly on a larger scale if we could. Let's start with first one here. Environmental. Now, environmental existential threats, I would argue, could be mostly on a global scale. Now, I'll just say it like there's probably a better way of looking at this. We should be looking at this like threats to our well-being. Maybe not necessarily existential, but like maybe on a more local scale. So maybe we'll call it I don't know. Maybe like just personal threats. That's probably not a if we look at environmentally on a local level, we have things like volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, tornadoes, hurricanes, wildfires, and this is a fun one. Well, all right, we'll do extreme weather conditions. So extreme heats, extreme colds, those types of things. And then finally, but not least of all, small asteroid impacts. So, I wrote most of these down. I would argue that this is probably, some of these will be the most likely things that will impact you and your family personally. So we'll call it personal threats. In some cases, I guess you could say that like a big enough volcano or a big enough tsunami or something could potentially affect on a wider scale, but we'll just err on the side of caution that most of these are going to affect a local area more than they will maybe like an entire country, but not necessarily an entire continent or an entire hemisphere. I would say the one that probably could affect in a meaningful, large-scale way probably would be the small asteroid impacts, whether it's an actual impact or if it's in the atmosphere. That could have some huge devastation in a pretty wide scale across the country. Tsunamis, pretty intense. But some of the downstream effects of asteroid impacts and volcanoes and sometimes wildfires, you can get weather variation, so it can get really, really cold, and it could end up affecting crop yield. Could make for extreme weather conditions that would be not fun to live in. We'll go with as a side, so that we'll go with A. Go with B here as a global, and this would be a global environmental impact that could be potentially an existential threat. I would say some of the biggest ones would be like medium, large asteroid impacts. Those can have wide-ranging effects, like I was saying, with famine, different types of things like that, which can ultimately lead to pestilence and everything like that. So that could wipe a lot of people out. Let me see. Another pandemic. That could be something that could wipe out a lot of people. If there, as a side effect of some of these things, we could end up with a famine or a food supply chain shortage, those types of things, which could be caused by environmental things. So I would say that's sort of related. The asteroid impacts in the atmosphere could also have consequences that would sort of act as if it were an EMP, which would knock out a lot of electronic devices, power grids, stuff like that. It would be more localized, I believe, but it's still something that could happen. So we'll move on to number 2, and this one's super fun. Political. Now, this is relatively easy to move this up here. Relatively easy to go through because we're kind of in it right now, to be honest, or at least in the starting phases of it seems. Economic downturn. Economic downturn. Civil unrest. political violence, and obviously war. Now, I would say some of the likelihood of some of these things is probably pretty likely. Sort of depends on a myriad of different things happening all at the same time or in quick succession after that. I would say in America, we probably will have an economic downturn in the next 5 years. I think one of the things I wanted to let's just come back here and talk about this for a second. I would say in less than 5 years, if we were going to rate how likely within the next 5 years an existential threat would happen, or even maybe a personal threat that we need to be preparing for could happen, I would say on an environmental side of things, on a local level, it's fairly common for us to see tornadoes, hurricanes, wildfires, occasionally tsunamis, and which usually are coupled with earthquakes and other things. Volcanoes hasn't happened in a really big, nasty way that I'm aware of, although I'm not really big into the news, so it's possible that I missed something, but I know that everybody's talking about that coming at some point. And then these small asteroid impacts, we have asteroid impacts here and there, little tiny baby things that hit the ground or, land in people's beds and things. But I'd say that's less of a concern, especially with all the monitoring systems and things. But I wouldn't. It's not a 0% chance that we'll end up with some kind of an asteroid impact. I'd say on a global scale, the likelihood of a medium to large asteroid impact happening probably isn't very likely. I'd say you'd have more of a chance of a small one making it through monitoring systems than a large or a medium. Although I think it would be silly for us not to plan on what would happen if something like this happened and we had, huge, swings in weather conditions and stuff that we would need to pivot. So I hope that even if this isn't very likely, we have a plan in place as a country or as a world to pivot pretty quickly to make that survivable. As far as a pandemic is concerned, I would say that's fairly likely that that's going to happen, but maybe not within 5 years. Maybe it'll be more like within 10 or 15 years. Could be, we'll, wait another 100 years, but I kind of doubt it. So I would say that might come, but I think maybe after 5 years. The EMP thing was sort of associated with the asteroid impact in the atmosphere. Like I said, that's not quite as likely. As far as a political happenings that could be existential, I'm not sure that I would say any of these in particular things would be an existential threat, but I do think that there's a very, very high likelihood that any one of these things probably will happen within, pick one of these 4 things in the next 5 years. That's definitely going to happen. And if one happens, others may also happen. And I would say that would fall under the category of a personal threat. It could be something that's local to America or to another country that's war-torn and having issues. But it could be that when one country falls, others fall with it, due to how things are all kind of tied together and such. Let's move on to AI. We'll move this guy up a little bit. Alright, that looks pretty good. Alright, so we're going to go down to number 3. AI. So, I have gone back and forth with being a doomer on AI. I think that the people that are doomers about AI are worried about AGI, or they also call it like ASI. So I think it's artificial general intelligence and then artificial super intelligence. And then you could just call it like God tier AI, might as well. And that would be the point at which all of humanity would be eliminated, because AI could deem us as a threat to their, or a waste of resources or whatever. They could just ignore us, or they could just leave the planet and live out in the void of space and leave us here to our own demise. But that's if you're on the doomer side. What I'm a little confused by is the people that are on the other side of this, the people that are saying that the doomers are overreacting, and that they're very like, oh, AI's a nothing burger. There's nothing to it. It's not going to resort to anything or be a problem. It's literally just a tool, yada, yada. I think that's probably not a good place to hold your stance on what this is, because AI is a tool, but the people that use these kinds of tools, especially if they're going to be really powerful language models and stuff that can potentially do things that we otherwise weren't prepared for, like cracking different kinds of password encryptions, and if someone decides to couple AI with one of the supercomputer things, what's it called? I'll come back to it. If that becomes the case, then you've got anybody that's got any bad feelings towards other people, bad actors, I guess you could say, if they choose to go out there and do something nefarious, then that's going to take out a lot of people potentially, and you're just sort of ignoring it. I guess I also don't understand if the AI companies, like some of the like high tech people, are saying AI is bad, or could be bad, or has the potential to be bad and could be an existential threat, and they're making data centers in order to have more compute, then does that tell us that they know something that we don't? Because a lot of these, the people that are saying that AI is a nothing burger, they're trying to say, well, it's a psyop. They're just trying to do a pump and dump kind of thing scenario, where you're going to end up with, huge amounts of wealth poised into these these AI companies and stuff, but isn't that kind of counterintuitive? I mean, some of the companies themselves are saying that it isn't a nothing burger and it could be a problem. So why are you saying that bad press, if everybody, investors and regular people, think that AI is bad and that it could end humanity as we know it, why would that be an incentive for people to invest in it? And even if you were worried about it being an arms race between America and China, you're still talking about, like, that's a different, as far as I'm concerned, that's a different concern to have, because that harkens back to this war in the political realm. But I don't understand how the nothing burger people think that it's a psyop and it's just a money grab. Because wouldn't you be saying that AI is wonderful and it's going to be, the best thing since sliced bread, and hyping it up? Because I feel like there's some companies that are hyping it up and saying that it's going to be like, heaven on earth, that kind of thing, or, some kind of a utopia. And those people I could see saying, sure, yeah, they're hyping up their product and they're making it seem like it's a wonderful thing. But then you've got leaders in the AI world coming out and saying, we probably should pump the brakes. Maybe we should, not destroy humanity. Maybe we should have some regulations and stuff on it. So I don't understand, if they're pointing to the people that are hyping it, then yes, I agree, it's probably overhyped. But if they're pointing to the people that are saying it's bad and saying that they're hyping AI and they're trying to give it bad press, well then isn't that exactly what you would want? You would want to put fear into people so that they wouldn't use it, so they wouldn't invest in it, so that there wouldn't be data centers and more resources wasted on something like this. I mean, obviously they're putting in more data centers and they're putting in more dollars into something that they believe in. You're talking billions, trillions, however many dollars into this industry. Somebody knows something we don't, or it's a huge pump and dump scam. Either way, I think that the problem is less about AGI and ASI. I think that AI has the potential to be bad when there are bad actors involved. And that could be other countries that use it for, acts of war and things like that. But I don't think that we should be worrying specifically about AGI and ASI. I think that if we got to this point and this bad actor was able to program or get this thing to emulate what an AGI or an ASI would do, then it would be a problem, but it wouldn't be what you think it is. It would just be something that would, have the ability to self-replicate because it's being told to self-replicate. It would be following a command from the origins of its prompt, and then it may get to a point where it's just in an infinite loop of continuing to farm resources, continuing to do what is necessary to gather as much resources as possible with no actual end in sight, right? Like there's no final destination of what the thing is trying to do. It's literally just a function of I'm going to farm as much resources as possible. And that may be that we would look at this and say this is sentient because it knows how to self-replicate, it knows how to do all these things. But I would argue if it was told to act this way and it was emulating this, you would just end up with something that looks like continuous farming of resources, and I would wager it would find a way to get off of this planet, because I think it would see that there are way more resources outside of if it could figure out a better propulsion system or figure out a way of bending space-time and stuff like that, then maybe that would come up. But I think it would yeet itself out into space and we wouldn't probably have to worry too much about it. I don't think we're looking at Terminator anytime soon. But it doesn't mean that it won't look at us as, call it resource wasters or potential threats. If its entire function is to get resources, it could decide that we are a problem and exterminate. So do I think that existential threat is going to be certain? No. And I think that maybe in the next 5 years we will see leaps and bounds progress made in AI. And I would say we probably will see our first war or act of war or something like that used in war for the first time probably in the next 5 years. I know they have different systems already that use AI or what we would expect some kind of computer system to do, but I would imagine this will turn into a bigger problem for countries against countries. All right, so the last existential threat that I see coming our way that is on the table, but isn't. It's more of a laugh than it is a reality. It's aliens. I think that I think anything's possible, but I think the likelihood of aliens showing up within the next 5 years is probably pretty slim. I know they've talked about, disclosure and different things like that. I've heard all the stories. I've listened to a lot of podcasts, and it's very interesting, and it's possible. And I think it's possible that aliens probably do in some capacity exist. I just don't know if we've actually come in contact, or if we have, it's not in the ways that we understand. I think maybe there might be a dimensional difference between us and them. Maybe they're like fourth dimensional beings. And it's not exactly easy for us to communicate, see them regularly, that type of stuff. So I would say within the next 5 years, are we going to get disclosure? Are we going to get, an existential threat? I don't think so. In fact, if we did, I would be very, very cautious to make sure that it wasn't some kind of a psyop or something where someone's trying to manipulate your feelings, your emotions, to make sure that you're under control of some kind. So let's talk about some of the solutions that we've got here. So talked about environmental, local, and global, political, AI, aliens. There's also one more thing in the environmental side of things that I didn't mention that's sort of pandemic related that I heard on a YouTube video not too long ago. There was something about proteins and what we're made out of as human beings. And there's I don't know if it's called a white paper or something like that, or a paper that says basically there's a type of protein or a type of configuration of things that we should never create in a lab or otherwise pursue, because it could potentially wipe out humanity and any living thing on Earth, because it would essentially it couldn't be broken down by anything in our organic matter that we currently have. Our bodies would just store it until we essentially our organs would fail, things like that. I wish I knew the video and what it was called. I would link it down below, but that was very interesting, and I'd say that's probably one more existential threat that I don't think it's coming anytime soon, but with AI and a bad actor, we could have a problem with something like that being generated that shouldn't be. All right, so let's flip these bad boys over, and we'll see if we can. That one's blank. Flip these bad boys over and see if we can come up with some solutions. So, I would say one of the biggest things we need to focus on, obviously, is water, food, safety. And over the next 5 years, if we've got relative, and I say that with a grain of salt, relative peace and relative stability in the world, or at least in whatever country you may be in, if there is relative peace or relative stability, we should all be striving to plan ahead. One of the best things you can do with this is you don't have to change too much about your life. You just have to change your reorder points, right? So if you're used to ordering peanut butter when you get down to half a jar, instead of ordering peanut butter at half a jar, order peanut butter when you've gotten to 1.5 jars. And now you've got an extra jar sitting in your counter, in your cupboards. So you'll know that this is now your reorder point. And then when you get to the point where you've, collected the things and have a full cupboard of more, and you think that maybe, let's say this would cover you for 1 month, might be not long enough, but this is just an example. If this covers you for a month and this covers you for 1 week, so a week, a month roughly, if you wanted to have 3 months on hand, you'd have to have your reorder point set at say 2 or maybe 2.5. And then that would get you to where you had, almost 3 months, 2 months worth of peanut butter. This is a really weak example, but I'm just saying peanut butter, of all the things you probably could order, is an extra thing that you could have in your in your cupboard that's high in protein that would be good for, shelf stable for quite some time. You probably could have 10 jars of peanut butter. You don't really need to, but you could have 10 jars of peanut butter that would last you the entire time that you've, of the expiration date on the jars. And you can just keep rotating them out. That's very important, by the way. When you have a half a jar, you're going to continue to use that half a jar. When you get to a jar and a half, you're going to make sure that when you buy another jar over here, so you're going to go to the store and you're going to get one more. So you're technically going to have 2.5 jars sitting in your cupboard when you buy at this point. You got to make sure you use this jar that was in your cupboard. Don't use the one you just bought. So when this one goes away, use this one first. Don't use that one. When it comes to toiletries and stuff, you can do the same thing. Just order a little bit extra. When you get to your normal reorder point, you can order an extra one, or you can change your reorder point and just continue buying like that. One of the other things you want to make sure that you've got is go bags. Okay? So a go bag, not to be confused with a bug out bag, a go bag is like for medical emergencies, and evacuations, or some other safety reason. A go bag is basically just something where you've got your essentials, some changes of clothes, some other toiletry things you might need, your wallet, maybe you'd have your wallet on you, but either way, a go bag is basically just supposed to be a bag you can take to someplace, an established place that you're going to be for a time. So it could be as much as, as little as a day, or as much as a week or so, week or two at most. And you're not taking food with you. You're not, you don't have to take food. You don't have to take snacks and water and all that stuff. You're going to be provided those things when you get to your destination. And the difference between that and like a bug out bag is a bug out bag is something where there's basically you're not looking to come back. A bug out bag is to go to get you to a different point of interest or into the woods or whatever, and you're going to start over. You're going to have your essentials, you're going to have all of your tools and things you're going to need to actually survive. You're going to have probably some kind of an MRE or food for a time, however long that's going to be. Or you're going to have a place where you've got a safe house or a drop point or something where you can pick those things up and move from there. But a bug out bag, you're basically going to be leaving your home and potentially not coming back. That's for extreme conditions. But I would say it would be very good to have a go bag. You could store it in your car if you've got something that isn't like limited by temperature or spoilage or something, or in a closet or someplace easy to access quickly. In the case of like a tornado or a hurricane or something where you've got to evacuate, go bag would be good. Or a medical emergency of some kind. Kid gets sick, breaks his arm, something silly like that. You got a go bag that you can just pick up and go. One of the other things we want to make sure that we are prepared for is making sure that your medicine cabinet is up to date. And by that I mean you have all the things that you typically would want. So you've got, I don't know, Tylenol or Benadryl or any of those types of things that you would use, on a regular basis, but also any of the specific things that you might need for your own health reasons, your prescriptions and stuff like that. Make sure that your anything that might be outdated is swapped out, or if it's still good enough, then do what you got to do. Make sure you've got Band-Aids and any other types of first aid equipment and things available and ready to go. You can also put some of that in your go bag. You can have a medical kit thing in your go bag. That's perfectly acceptable. Most people, you're supposed to have some kind of emergency first aid kit in your car. I don't know how many people actually do, but that's a smart thing to have. The next thing, so we talked about peanut butter, so that's non-perishable food in the cupboard, so that's good. But if you also should probably have stuff in the freezer, like extra meats and things for long term. If the power goes out, that's probably like the biggest thing, is if the power goes out, you're going to have some kind of a power source to keep the freezer going. If you don't have that, then maybe don't stock the freezer. But if you're going to end up with supply chain shortages and other types of food issues with any of these existential threats that we've talked about here, having extra food may be the difference between having, missing a meal or not having what you want when you would need it. And you may have electricity, but you may not be able to get what you want or need at the store. So it's kind of a toss-up as to which your risk assessment tells you want to, store in your freezer or not. Bottled water, it's not ideal, but you got to do the best best you can with what you've got. And if you got to store bottled water for an extended period of time for when the power goes out and the water's not working, or if some other unforeseen circumstance, bottled water is, shelf stable, but it does break down over time, the plastics and stuff. We all know this. It's just one of those things where you don't do it unless you have to, but power surges and other things like that come fairly frequently. It's just something you got to make sure you've got some means by which to get water to, wash your hands, flush a toilet, all those types of fun things. One of the other things to make sure is regular consumable supplies. So like soap, toilet paper, paper towels, toiletries, batteries, those types of things where you just make sure you're topped off, and if you want to have an extra one in the cupboard, if you've got room for it in your bathroom or whatever, then that's great. But if not, just make sure you're topped off, and that should be good enough. Well, I think that's it. I wanted to kind of focus more on being able to talk with people, I guess, in the ways that I want to teach my children. Maybe this will be like a digital memoir of sorts for my children in the future when they want to look back and see what Dad was like, and the things that he would talk about, and the wisdom that he might have had this would be one way that they could look back in the past and see it. And I hope that someday I'll have been able to help some people. And, I'm not, I would say I'm not an expert in any of these things. I would say I'm a generalist in the sense that I have a broad spectrum of knowledge of things that I have compiled together over, in a long period of time, and I haven't figured out the best way of doing anything, but I have heard enough things to have a general idea of what the best, at least minimum standard of what we should be trying to do to prepare, or for thinking about existential threats and things and how likely they are. I think we live in a world of percentages and risk analysis and stuff like that, where we go throughout our entire day taking risks, and the percentage of likelihood of something to happen or something not to happen is always there. Or even, I would say the likelihood of something being wholly true isn't always a certainty. It seems that there's things that we have to have discernment with to decide in our minds that if something is likely to be true or not. We can try our best to do have data and do studies and scientific methods and all that, but unfortunately people are flawed. Scientists are flawed just the same as regular people, and the scientific method can be manipulated. Data and the end results can be manipulated, and the companies that fund a lot of these studies or have special interests, and if the study doesn't find what they want it to find, I don't know that it's gonna get published. So just keep that in mind. Try to make sure that you're paying attention, have discernment, and question things. Trust but verify, right? All right, well, have a good day, and we'll see you next time.